Firstly, it is the definition of concept and its relevance towards NPM. For the first concept, which is meritocracy, this means that the most capable and dedicated individuals can succeed in obtaining the most coveted, respectable, and well-paid posts. In the public sector, meritocracy can be seen whereby positions and duties are assigned to people based on their merits, which are established through impartial assessments or tests. For example, the Public Service Innovation Award for individuals are granted to those who have made creative contributions to enhance the quality of services or outputs of their respective organizations. The second concept is performance indicator. The purpose of performance indicator would be to collect and report data on the effectiveness, reliability, and efficiency of performance in the public sector. Thus, key performance indicators or KPIs are used as a performance indicator tool to determine whether an organization's goals are in accordance with its mission, vision, and aim. As an example, on January 1, 2004, our former Prime Minister Tun Abdullah Ahmad Badawi imposed a mandatory order for all ministries and agencies dealing with the public, such as the Immigration Department, the Inland Revenue Department, the Road Transport Department, and National Registration Department, to develop their own KPIs. The KPIs were developed as part of the government's effort to improve the public service delivery system and as evidence that the principles of transparency and good governance are being upheld.
The next definition of concept is the performance-based pay. So it can be defined when the pay is based on whether the target or the objective are achieved by the employees. And this compensation is directly tied to an employee's contribution to a company or the company's financial performance over the pay period. So the top performers will be rewarded, middle rank will be compensated adequately, while the poor performers will be eliminated directly, which we can be applied in the marketing department, where we can relate it with the insurance company, as the employees will usually be rewarded if successfully achieve their target. And this performance-based pay system is in fact being implemented in Malaysia. As quoted from the Kelly Global Workforce Index, a total of 72% and 59% of respondents in Malaysia and Asia Pacific respectively have their pay tied to some form of performance or product targets.
Moving on towards the next concept, which is performance management and its relevance towards NPM. The purpose of performance management is to foster an atmosphere where employees may work to their full potential and produce the highest quality of work effectively and efficiently. According to Osborne and Gabler 1992, spurred on by the new public management movement in the late 1980s, interest in measuring performance in the public sector has increased. As part of performance management, the public administration was made to be more similar to private management. The government believes that expanding the role of the private sector will improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the public sector. Thus, NPM is used as a performance management tool as it emphasizes on performance, outputs, and customer orientation. Furthermore, its practices derives mainly from the private sector. Thus, the public sector in Malaysia has undergone a number of changes through the implementation of NPM, whereby it introduces several tools such as the Quality Control Circle, QCC, and the Total Quality Management TQM in the late 1980s, as well as the performance-based pay in the early 1990s according to Siti Nabiha 2008. Then, in early 2005, the government imposed a performance-based culture in the public sector, requiring all to develop, assess, and report their KPIs. The use of this performance-based approach seeks to promote effective governance and continual improvement of the public service delivery system.
Next is the definition of concept of personnel management, which it can be defined as an administrative function within an organization that oversees the hiring organization and support of employee position. So the relevance of personnel management towards NPM is that under the Malaysian context, public personnel management has undergone extensive reform, which is focused to improve the public service delivery of Malaysia's civil service. So the Malaysian public sector has been remarkably converted into a goal-driven institution thanks to the new public management NPM approach. So with the government focusing on improving the personnel management in the organization and let it be the example of the people, It can and will provide some context to the employees, not to mention a clear guidance on the effort, duties, and also the quality that is expected of them. So this letter can then promote the employee performance in relation to established and organizational goals. And this will bring us back to the base of the problem, in which in order to improve the public service quality of Malaysia, the internal issues such as the personnel management should be prioritized first.
Okay, going on to the issue of administrative performance in Malaysia. First is civil servant face job pressure. If the job pressure being handled correctly can boost a person's productivity and motivation. But if handled incorrectly, it can have the opposite effect and harm work performance. We can see where civil officials in the health, education and security sector are particularly vulnerable to work-related stress. For example, Professor Dr. Sharifah Izzatwan Putih, Community Health Physician at the Faculty of Medicine, University Kebangsaan Malaysia UKM, stated that whether it is a government or private hospital, staff in the field such as at the CAC COVID-19 Assessment Center are all in a stressful situation, and many officers are struggling with the problem of lack of staff, having to replace staff who are quarantined, a high patient load and lack of medical equipment. So job pressure also can drive civil officials to use drugs. According to Abdul Rahman Muhammad Nordin, which is Secretary General of QPEX, over 800 civil servants were arrested for drug offences throughout 2021. So when a person is unable to regulate the work stress, it will cause negative consequences which can affect health and productivity in the long run. Okay, next is lack of ethics. Danger can come from either inside or outside of an organization. In today's world, most danger that company face come from the individual working within the organization themselves. For example, corruption, which is still widespread among public sector. Same goes to the drug addiction. Corruption is the most significant threat to the country. In 2021, the number of civil servants arrested for corruption offences was 411, and there are those public workers who use their job as money pits and brazenly make a living off corrupting others and abusing their power. As we can see, 27 immigration agents was arrested for their involvement in a syndicate that forged stamps at the country's border. At the Kuala Lumpur International Airport, officers to demand a fee ranging from 500 up to 6,000 per person to allow them to freely enter and exit the airport and return to their home country through special counter known as a setting counter. If this continues, it will worsen and spread until it becomes an epidemic and a virus to our country. Last is old way of providing public services. There's no denying that some of the tasks are still made by hand even today, which more people are needed and it's harder for people who come to get services. So counter service at the Road Transport Department, which is JPJ, office in Taman Daya, Johor Bahru, was found to be inefficient and to use an old system that is not user-friendly. JPJ counter service system, which is 10 years old, is too old and needs to be updated to fit the digital age. So for Malaysian driving license LMM printing machine that provided by National Security Printing PKN, only 2 of them was work. This just shows that their service is inconvenient if only 2 machines are working. This adjustment will consume people's time, especially those who work and come during their breaks. It's clear that things need to be improved, that quality and services make people's lives easier.
The first issue is regarding the civil servant that face job pressure. Most Malaysians, especially those who live in Kuala Lumpur, are facing serious work pressure to bear their cost of living. This is influenced by a few factors such as the work intensity of an individual, where they are pressured by the employers, and also the norm of the Malaysian working system, where they offered inadequate annual leave, giving longer working hours and unending workload with a minimum wage. Therefore, these factors have affected employee performance and eventually will result in a downturn in expected delivery services by organizations, especially in the public sector. Moreover, this issue turned out even worse when COVID-19 strikes in 2019, whereas 3 years ago the world has been shocked by the pandemic disease that evolved rapidly throughout the first year. This has affected the health sector, where most people suffer from the disease and lost their job due to the organization having to perform a retrenchment to cut costs to save their businesses. Other causes that affect the issue of administrative reform is in terms of unethical behavior by some of the civil servants who lack integrity in performing their job. It is something that a rational mind can identify which decision is right and which is wrong. For instance, civil servants in Malaysia have the specific laws and regulation, which are the Peraturan-Peraturan Pegawai Awam, Kelakuan dan Tata Tertib 1993. These laws and regulations wrote down the most common responsibility as a guideline for the civil servants to obey, such as being in the office on time, not accepting bribes from customers, submitting claims honestly, and many more. However, as stated in the research findings, corruption and abuse of power still occur, and usually it will happen within an organization if ethics and integrity are neglected. Next, employees and employers also tend to lose their integrity due to the reason of delay in conducting any investigation. These are the problems faced by Malaysia nowadays, where the legal system in Malaysia is too complicated to go through. For instance, the protection afforded by Section 20 of the Industrial Relations Act 1967 stated that all dismissals must be with just cause and excuses, which means that a piece of adequate evidence is needed to dismiss any employer who is accused of breaking the law. The fact that these laws and procedures are not easy as it seems, employers tend to turn a blind eye to this matter and let it slip away, as handling it will be time-consuming and a waste of money. Besides that, government works in Malaysia are still based on an old way of providing public services. For a developing country like Malaysia, it is important to try in changing the way of delivering services and upgrading the performance of public servants. Although plans have been presented and the effort to change our system into a more digitalized one has been proven through the launch of My Digital and the Malaysia Digital Economy Blueprint, some people are still unwilling to shift to new changes and find it hard to adjust to it. This can be seen from a few years ago when most of the government systems are not fully digitalized yet, as people are too comfortable with the previous system where most of them are still using hard copy documents and writing information on paper. The reason for unwillingness to change can be a barrier to administrative reform in Malaysia, as changing requires cooperation between the people and the government as well. From what can we see now is that the citizens are only switching to replace method of how they function daily, without fully transforming or being willing to adopt digitized methods. Not to mention the rural area where internet reception is very poor, preventing schools from offering hybrid classes and disabling people from getting easy access to deal with government agencies online. Therefore, I would say that Malaysia are still considered not ready for digitalized administrative system.
The recommendation to improve administrative performance in Malaysia is by restructuring the organization. This is because by restructuring the organization, it can make an assessment to identify areas of competence, potential risks, and use the findings to inform the strategy solutions. In other hand, by making organizational improvement, it can directly reduce the pressure of civil servants at work because a more specific and orderly structuring of work according to scope of the field of competence has been found. For example, privatization is also one of the ways that have produced a very significant impact and encourage the structuring of the government. This is because privatization can reduce political interference due to the reduction of government interference in administration because the private sector makes its own decision, reduce the congestion in administration and promote the competition. The next recommendation is to improve the integrity between employers and employees. This is because NPM should take steps to change the attitude of civil servants. As stated in an article, Mahathir stated that the way to improve efficiency among civil servants should be leader by example in order to increase the efficiency and productivity in the public sector. For example, the recognition given to officer and staff for excellent service and contribution to the country can directly motivate employees, and with the reward given, it can also increase the efficiency and morale of civil servants in public service. This because integrity is often defined as the quality of acting as an individual or organization in accordance with moral value, norms, and rules. Next, a way to improve administrative performance is by holding development programs and increase the job marketability. This is to remain competitive in the labor market situation, which is expected to be more challenging after COVID-19. Therefore, it is important to equip the existing labor force with the skill required by the industry. For example, by holding a structured internship program (SIP), it takes a more proactive role in providing the right skill to youth from the higher education level, to ensuring that they are occupied with relevant skill based on industry needs after graduation. With that, by participating in industrial training program and encouraging youth participation in industrial training to improve skill in line with the needs of the labor market, we are encouraged not only youth but also the employers.
Moving on with the next recommendation, which is to improve ethical values in governance. So here, there should be no political interference in administration and politicization in administration, since politics should be separated from the administration, as we want to avoid the government to act on their interests, because people select the government, so the government should act on the people's interests rather than theirs. So this then will create transparency and accountability along with easing the paperwork, as ethics has everything to do with management, as if there's no ethic, no rules will be bound within the government and cause chaos to the government system. So an integrity-based approach to ethics management will combine a concern for the law with an emphasis on managerial responsibility for ethical behavior. The next recommendation is to make an approach to alter the traditional system, which it is undeniable fact that in Malaysia government today, they cannot keep up with the technological system today. So there is a need to alter the traditional system, like creating an established system like e-governance or digitization. For example, in Sabah, we have Sabah Pay. It is one of the initiatives made by the Sabah state government to create our own e-wallet. And this can also help to reduce red tapeism, like to reduce all the bureaucracy system, since we already have established digitization like e-governance. And this can also help us to keep up the latest development and the government potential societal impact. Like people will be feeling content on how easily they can fulfill their needs at the government agency. Last but not least of our recommendation is the continuous exposure and education about the administrative reform, because this is the only way to reduce the people's stubbornness into the changing to the betterment of the government. So we can continuously educate, and the government can also continuously educate them onto the understanding and philosophy of why the administrative reform happened the way it is. And this can also help strengthen states and citizens' cooperation, as we will have the same level of mindset. And this can also be implemented in our education in the subject courses like university, like our course public administration. We're actually getting the exposure that we needed and understood why the government had to act this way and its governance. So this kind of recommendation or purpose can be very beneficial for all parties, as it will help the government to expose and educate the people regarding the changes that is made in our government.
In conclusion, the government must first identify the primary problems, or better yet, the issues surrounding Malaysia's administrative system, to develop methods to enhance performance management. Hence, they would be able to resolve the issues once they had a better knowledge of it. Over the past decades, the public sector has seen a great deal of effort put into improving its performance management through the use of TQM, QCC, client charters, ISO 9000, privatization, benchmarking, and etc. as strategies to improve administrative performance in the public sector through NPM.